Okay, welcome to another episode of the ABCs for ERP and beyond. And I'm welcoming my co-host, as usual, Nirav Shah. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Peter. How are you? Excited for our episode today and talking about AI. I love recording these podcasts. I think it's super informative. I hope our viewers and our listeners out there, can take away something each time to listen to this. But I'm excited to be here, and more excited to be here talking to you, Peter.
Yeah, so we've mentioned AI before, haven't we, on a few previous episodes here and there, but I think it's time to probably cover it in its own episode. One of many. I'm sure we're going to do this quite a few times on AI.
Yeah,
It's the talk of the town, isn't it?
it is. It is. I don't even think everybody knows. There's anyone that knows everything about it and the possibilities
Hmm.
and the opportunities, right? I think today we might just be scratching the surface. When we look back at our episode we do today versus what we do in like 6 months or a year from now, it might just be wow. We knew
Yeah,
very little
yeah,
here,
exactly.
but what we do know is that it's technology that's taking over. It's the new way of finding and sourcing data, right? It's a
Mm,
new way to find a starting point. Um, and it's I think exciting technology that's integrated in so many different ways, in so many different shapes and forms, so many use cases out there. So it's AI is here to stay. We know that. There's a lot of momentum behind it, and today we're just gonna, talk about
mm.
AI application usage when it comes to ERP, and what we know so far with AI and ERP, and where we think that this technology is going to go here in the future.
Yeah, I think it was Bill Gates. I think I heard him reference to AI like this new resurgence of like ChatGPT. Because remember, we've had AI for years
Mhm.
already. Like we had chatbots, help bots, pop up bots on websites, and even go back to like Clippy. Do you remember Clippy in Microsoft
Oh
Word
yeah,
or
yeah,
animated? So we've had it for a long time, but I think it's like now is serious AI, isn't it?
yeah. Oh, it's seriously. I think it just makes sense because there's been so much internet usage, right? So a lot of that data of people just, providing these search engines and, all this data sitting there, somebody just, smart enough. I'm not that smart, but somebody to be able to put it together, package it into a form where you could extrapolate all that. I mean, that's just amazing. And that machine learning and technology is going to it's getting smarter and smarter.
Yeah. I think Bill Gates said that this is going to be um, probably a bigger change for human civilization than the internet was when that
Yeah.
came around. Like, look how much that's changed the way that the whole world operates.
Hmm.
Uh, and he said, this is the one. This is the big one.
Hmm. Hmm. This is the big one for sure. This is good. This is a disruptor. It's gonna move inventory industries. I feel like in a better direction. To have higher ROI, right? And from a business standpoint, it's a lot of opportunities to kind of have a fresh look at where you are and where you could potentially be going with this technology, but you got to be able to make those moves and keep up with it, right? I think, as Bill
Mm,
Gates pointed out, right, this is going to have massive effects across, you know, um, the different platforms and industries. But if it's starting to be if the companies adopt it, right, if you kind of shove it under the rug and don't, think nothing much of it and think, oh, this is just one of those situations that maybe might be a fad and might not go
mm,
anywhere. I got news for you, buddy. I'm kind of
mhm.
afraid that this is going to be here to stay, and those companies that take full advantage of this new tool are the ones that are going to just start moving a little bit faster ahead.
Mm. Yeah, this is definitely something to stay. I don't see it as a fad. And I think it's another case of if you don't embrace it, or at least be aware of it and receptive and open to what its possible um, advantages are, then you're going to be left behind.
Yeah,
For me, it's the same as the internet. It's like if you're not on the internet now, you're left behind,
yeah, yeah.
and it's as simple as that. Whether that's
Absolutely.
like this, there's as much as a scary side as there is as an excited side. I'm not
Hmm.
sure where I sit. I'm sitting on the fence right now. I'm just as excited as I am scared for this.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
because, as you said,
right.
it's a
So
disruptor. It's a
it
big
is.
disruptor to the way we work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, for this episode, let's concentrate on specifically how AI fits within the ERP world. So, let's just see where we go with this. What would you say is the current state of AI in ERP? Do we have anything at all at the moment, or is this really new thing uh, being introduced into ERP?
Yeah, I think there's some remnants of it currently there. There's some areas where AI exists, but it's not, what I would say, fully fleshed AI. So like your Power BI, for example, pulling your data out, seeing different ways, running different reports. But that's, I feel like, more controlled. You know what data you're putting out, so you know what you're looking for. But it could happen while you're reviewing a specific report. There's a different type of KPI that comes out of it that makes the report even more useful than what your the original intended purpose was, right? Just because you can now see some more of that data that's coming to light. I think that was an initial pass of trying to be able to look at what your data is doing in the ERP system, by bringing it out, and then byproduct of that is there's other information that came out of that, that they're able to kind of look at their business on from that perspective. But there is, and we'll talk a little bit later about this, there's definitely specific pointed functionality that's coming out with AI, and that's combining a lot of different tools out there. People probably use copy.ai. That's essentially creating content for you, based on different emphasis and different based on the style of writing that you want, right? It's doing a lot of this heavy lifting for you. You have Jasper.ai that's doing
Mm,
blog contenting and different type of content management, type of things that you need there. You have um, obviously ChatGTP, the biggest one out there, right? And you could probably search in a ton of ChatGTP questions on there. Like, hey, ChatGTP, tell me the best way to put in a sales order for Acumatica, or put in a sales order for Business Central, and I'm sure it'll pump out the exact steps on how to put in a sales
mm,
order, right? Um, so stuff like that is now here. I don't think it was there prior to ChatGPT. But there's few things like that. I know there are some tools developed in, especially in the dynamic space, where um, you could quickly learn dynamics by you know by purchasing a third party tool that takes you could create your own training protocol, essentially. So anyone that gets onboarded, you could just say, hey, here's this, go to this module, and it's going to teach you how to put in a sales order, how you put in a purchase order according to our processes, right? So it's kind of you create the rules, and you'll do it. But I could see that, right, turning into more and more like, okay, well, let's see how people are doing it, outside of the work instructions, right? Because everyone has certain different ways that they do things. Right? As much as you want to try to keep everybody in a box during an ERP implementation, they end up finding ways that makes their job easier and faster, right?
mm,
So maybe that tool could morph into saying, well, hey, yeah, this is where we should be doing these 3 steps to create a sales order, but the users have figured out that there's actually 2 steps to create a sales order. You don't need the third step, so we're going to go and revise your training plan for you because it's
mm,
working, right? So there could be that type of thing that happens. I feel like, because now that data is being accumulated, and with AI could give you that feedback. So there's the current state of ERP is, the databases are compatible now. These servers are a lot more stronger and powerful, right? You could store a lot more information. You could retrieve it faster. I think the groundwork is there, from a continuous improvement or continuous add-ons from an AI perspective. And like I said, there was some Power BI and some tools there where you could bring your data out, and try to review a certain KPI, but then that leads to another KPI, that's beneficial for the business. So there,
mm,
I think
mm.
this is a natural progression. I feel like.
Yeah. I think the AI that we've seen up to today is really quite stupid in a way that it needed
Hmm.
all the facts up front to then go to, oh, here's an insight that you probably
Right.
could have got to yourself. It's just saving you a few minutes doing it yourself. It's quite a stupid AI. But now the AI that we're seeing come through is working on such a deep level.
Yeah.
It's not surface level. It's like, for example, some of the things that we've seen in Power BI, where you give it a few different metrics and go, right, summarize that by region. And it would go, oh,
Hmm.
most of your sales are in this part of the world. Like,
Yeah.
that's quite surface level. But now the depth of AI coming is on a level that we just haven't seen before. And
Yeah.
that's what's going to be interesting. I think there's
Yeah.
two things for me is the depth of AI coming and the integration of AI.
Hmm.
So, have you said before, like Jasper.ai is blog content? It's a writer, isn't it? But it was by itself. You had to go over to that platform, plug in a
Hmm.
load of stuff, and then go somewhere else with it. Whereas for things coming through, like the guys at OpenAI with ChatGPT and ChatGPT version 4 now, where they've opened up APIs, and now there's plugins coming for ChatGPT 4. That
Okay.
integration um, is a whole new field that we haven't really seen before. So that's where I see these kind of things coming for ERP, really, because even if you took training, for example, you would have to go somewhere else, whether it be like a pre-written manual or whether it be a suite of videos or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
You have to go over to there to do it or train and then come back to your ERP.
Right.
Whereas imagine if that's actually in your ERP
Yeah.
and then couple that with the depth. That's the interplay between those two things is really cool because now you can have potentially, and we'll probably get onto the ethics side of this later on, but you
Yeah.
could have the um, the the AI, whatever it happens to be, looking at how you're processing things, spotting gaps in your knowledge or whatever it happens to be, or seeing where you're a bit slower and you might suggest more training in how you do this, or suggest, or every time you do that, you do know that you could have done it this way and it would have been a much quicker, simpler method, or whatever it happens to be.
Yep. 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 Absolutely. And it's kind of scary, right? What if you put in, you have all this data in your ERP system, and then ChatGTP comes like, well, you should have selected another system instead of this, based on how you're doing your transactions. There was this other system out there. I guess that you could look at it as a good or bad thing, but I mean, right? It's hey, can you imagine what it does to that ERP evaluation process? Like, if it just knows your business, right, and it sees what you're doing in your current ERP, and let's say you're trying to not move into another ERP system. Hey, saying after everything that you've been doing so far, right? Here's a better system for you, and it basically just pinpoints, right? Maybe the top three systems you should be looking at, and it takes out the guesswork, right?
Yeah, I'd never really thought about that before. It depends on what, like, there's going to always be this thing around how much data do you feel comfortable feeding this. If, for example, you just said, right, have everything, then yeah, the world's your oyster. It's like, yeah, read every
Yeah,
single email sent by any company email address I've got in the history of us operating emails. Now
yeah,
read every customer interaction, and then just give it like, I don't know, a set of user stories of people that say, I wish my ERP did this, and
right.
then use that with 10 years worth of interactions with customers, and then go, right, so what should we use?
Yeah, exactly.
Here's all the sales data, and it'll say, oh, you'll be able to see how you operate, whether it's like large infrequent orders, or is it a mess of all, load of high turnover of stock, or it could see those kind of patterns and go, right, of that, if your business is like that, then maybe you should lean towards this ERP or that
Exactly.
ERP.
Exactly. Yeah, and you know, I think going back to, I think you're talking about, you know, AI in the current state. You know, there's automation, right? The functionality that ERP systems have, OCR, right? Trying to recognize what that data is. So when an invoice comes in, AP invoice comes in, for example, right? Um, but it's, yeah, it's gonna AI is just gonna take that one step further, right? Um, for you, and think about all different areas, right? You have AP, AR, inventory, forecasting. It's just really gonna provide that supercharger, right? When you're ready to look at your data and analyze it,
Mm,
to, you know, tell you, right, recommendations of what you should possibly be doing, that you could be doing better, essentially.
mm,
And they can't hurt. I don't think that could hurt. It's always good to do it, but the company needs to have the bandwidth to analyze that and take action. At the end of the day, if you can't take action on it, none of this information is going to matter, right? So there's a fine line there with all this, right? So I think that kind of goes into our next point, is we're going to talk about the future cases of AI and ERP. Um, is
mm,
the possibilities are endless, right? Um, there.
mm. Yeah, I think we've seen. Certainly felt like I've just seen a barrage of what Microsoft are doing. It seems that the last couple of weeks, I know we're recording this, it's the 2nd of April, so throughout most of March, I would say, we have seen a barrage of things coming out of Microsoft.
Hmm.
Um, Microsoft Loop, which is, we've seen Loop components, which is this collaborative um, component that will kind of allow different users to come together to work on whether it be a table or a voting poll, whatever. Which I've already seen that in Teams and Microsoft Office, you know, programs across the whole lot.
Yep.
Um, then we've got Microsoft Loop as a standalone program, which seems to be their answer to things like Notion, some kind of
Hmm.
collaborative cloud-based work platform that you can customize for what you need, whether it be using it as a Kanban board or whatever it
Hmm.
happens to be.
Yep.
And then, of course, the biggest one that's coming is Copilot.
Copilot.
So I don't know how much you've seen of Copilot, but what I've seen from the Microsoft videos that they've put out, wow, that is a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah. I signed up for the. We signed up for the beta version of it to get the release link for Business Central. So we're waiting to get that latest link so we could play with it. But that's a game changer. As you mentioned, you know, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. But there's functionality that Copilot's going to be rolled out, right, systemically throughout all the solutions that Microsoft has. Um, and there's a really, really cool use case for it in the Business Central side, to auto create text descriptions.
So, okay, let's change tack slightly. Of AI and the future and how it sits within ERP, what would be your like top two things that you would love to see? Maybe from the point of an ERP implementer.
Yeah, I think I would like, from an implementation perspective,
Mm.
and we're looking at a new project and we're trying to understand what are the best fit in processes. We're trying to understand where the best fit of setups potentially, right? Um, what does phase one or phase two look like? Um, is to be able to properly frame up a project, right? And a lot of times customers will tell us, well, we want this. We need the ability to measure every single thing in manufacturing, right? We want to be able to, you know, have 9 level deep bill of materials because that's how we manage things, right? And we need to be able to start and stop each different operation steps we have on the routing, right? And then when we finish something, we want to do a put away, but they want all that, right? But if you actually look at what they're doing now, they're doing none of that now. They don't
Mm.
have the bandwidth to manage, you know, maybe 10 level deep bill of materials. It's a nice to have, right? You could create that granularity. They don't have enough terminals on the floor to be able to, you know, capture all the time floor activities that are necessary. You're gonna have a backup traffic jam at different terminals if you want everyone to, scan on, scan off, right? And number three is you don't have maybe enough material handlers where you could basically say when we complete a production order, we want to put inventory here, and then now we want to move it, have a official or a more disciplined movement type of transaction to take it from finished goods to the stocking area. Maybe you don't have enough forklifts, right? Yeah, there's a lot of factors there that AI can't help you with, right? But if there's ways where we could look at that from an implementation perspective to help us frame up projects and say, hey, look, here's the data. It's telling us that we can't implement this the way you're thinking about right now, and it's actually a risk because the implementation could fail because we could roll this out and everything could come to a grinding halt. And you can't produce products and you can't ship products and you can't invoice customers. We don't want that, right? But there's just all this data that you've accumulated. It's telling us that, probably the best route for us right now initially is this. Let's have maybe more consolidated bill of materials. Let's do a little bit more back flushing. Have a few less routing steps. We're consolidating routing steps potentially because some of the routing steps are immaterial to the total roll up cost of the item. And when we complete that finished good or production order, let's go straight to the stocking place instead of having another interim step, right? We're saving so much time in the process, right? Because there is a cost to every keystroke that a user is doing in the ERP system, right? There is.
Hmm.
I mean, there just
Yep.
is, right?
Yep.
You want to be able to maximize that. You want to be able to, find out what is a cost benefit analysis. What is does a benefit outweigh the cost of that transaction, right? You should always have that in the forefront, right? And I feel like AI could help in these certain areas. It's like to an implementer saying, yeah, we recommend it would be recommended you implement this. Think about this, right? At least here in the States, when you get a car, for example, Tesla, okay? When you get a car, and I know this because I don't have a Tesla, my mom just bought a Tesla, but you could buy a Tesla, get their insurance, and what they do is they manage your insurance rates based on how rough or how efficiently you drive that car because they're
I didn't know
getting
that.
that data. They're getting
That's
that
ridiculous.
data. Yeah, because you could buy Tesla insurance with the car. You don't have to buy your own insurance. You can just have it all wrapped up nicely in a package, right? As part of your subscription, essentially, right? Because you have a payment and you have the insurance. It's basically all lumped up together. Now they're having that data. So when they're doing, let's say they want to get a new car, they could download that data, right, and say to that okay. So what is the ideal car for me? You see how I'm there's like, well, you're driving a Tesla now, right? You barely drive. Maybe you should get a bike. You don't need a car, right? So I mean, think about it, right? I mean, if you could get that data, right, and it gives you that feedback, right, constantly, like, hey, this is what you're doing. You're not using the full potential, right? A lot of times, people will buy ERP systems and they'll only use 20% of it. You got oversold, right? And you're paying more than what you're actually using, right? It's like you're buying a plane ticket and for like 3 seats, but you're only sitting in one. Why would you do that, right?
Mm,
So it's like kind of trying to understand like what system you fit into properly, right? I think that from an implementer perspective, right? That's always what we face because we'll say we're always to the nature is let's do less customizations, let's find the right solution fit, right? And customers are always like, no, no, no. Yeah, we need to go the F&O route. We need to go the SAP route because we've heard SAP is like the granddaddy ERP systems of all. We need that, right? Yeah, we have a budget, but we need that. Okay, well,
mm,
do you need multinational functionality? No. Do you need do you need handheld solutions integration? No. Okay, what do you need do you have different sales tax requirements into one instance? No. Okay, well, you don't need that.
mm.
Let's break it back down a little bit, right? Here's a
Yeah.
solution that you guys could use that's going to make more sense to you. It's going to make more sense to your users. You're going to be able to scale with this a little better. um but it's like buying a big house but you're only going to use one room. Why do
Mm,
that? you know but I think AI could help there, help companies understand how and what type of systems that they should be looking at, essentially, right?
mhm.
If they have, right, obviously first you have to make that move to the cloud. You got to be able to have some history and some data available, but I think over time companies will be able to get this information out and find better solution fits for them. I think that's, I think one of the biggest ones from an implementer. Maybe real quickly, just to answer your question, Peter, number two could be like if, being able to have different models of ROI, predictability for customers,
Mm,
to say, hey, this is what your revenue is, this is what your software subscription is, right? This is what's realistic in terms of what sales you're having right now, and if it grows by 3%, and what the subscription cost is increasing by, so on and so forth. Here's what your ROI looks like, right? Everyone wants to know what that
yeah.
is. A more realistic model for that would be pretty helpful. But I think that's what kind of just come to mind, real quickly, from that perspective, being an implementer.
Hmm. I think for me, then on the if I do the flip side, then for the company, I guess for me, I if I would have say my top three, I think number one would probably be increased automation. I think that at least the first phase of this AI is probably going to be around automation, taking some of the mundane work off, all the stuff that might take you 2 hours, but you can do now in two clicks of a button. Um, Freeing your time up to do um, actual more value stuff than um, you're kind of busy with at the moment. So I
Mm-hmm.
think seeing more and more of that, and I'm thinking more not just data entry, but even the presentation of data. Um, I think we've spoken about this before that we don't really teach this in schools. We'll teach subjects like math, um, and we'll teach English and how to use the words, and the right order and how grammar works. We don't really do that with data. We don't teach the right
Right.
order of data, or even things like how a PowerPoint slide should be put together, how you should not saturate the viewer's brain when you're trying to talk to them. There's a load of text and you've got pretty pictures and you've got graphs all bundled. We don't really teach good data presentation techniques.
Right.
So I think maybe there's two things here. One, that AI can now do this for us and go, I want this, and it will do the automation side of it. But also then be able to explain what it's done. I've seen this with ChatGPT. When you ask it to do a bit of code, I've thrown a few kind of Python exercise at it, and it's given the code back a couple of tweaks afterwards, but it's then listed out exactly what it's done, why it's done it, why it's important to do that in the code. Like that's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
So I think that's my number one. Number two for me would be a bit like what you said, a deeper insight into my company,
Mm-hmm.
things I might not have seen before, trends. These things aren't just surface level. It'll be able to kind of tease out these things that might be a little bit deeper, that might just get hidden in the day to day of running a business. That's going to be really interesting. Some of these deeper cognitive insights it will be able to pull. Whether that's if you're again, it depends on the data you're chucking at it. But if you're chucking it kind of social media feeds or scanning review sites for your product, whether you're allowing it to see some of your CRM processes and your customer interaction through emails, all of that we get flooded with every single day,
Yep.
banging back emails back and forth. No one's really sitting down and analyzing this. Um, be interesting to see what AI can pull out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my third one would probably be a higher level of collaboration with people in the company.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about collaborative tools, but as I said before, they're always tools outside of an ERP or outside of Outlook. It's never fully integrated itself. So I have to make a conscious effort to minimize Outlook, to use this new collaboration tool that we've decided to buy. Um, there's a bit of friction there. But if it's now within the programs that people are using every single day, then naturally will should hopefully become a little bit more collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
So one, the collaboration might be there, and two, you might actually have less arguments. So if you've always got this AI thing that's unbiased, hopefully, before it
Hey,
takes over
that's a
the
good
world.
point. That's a good point. Has to be unbiased. Because what if you
Before
could
it
put
takes
those,
over the world.
yeah, the emphasis on there, make it a non-important point in this meeting, but it actually is a really big important point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It might become really lazy and blasé. Yeah, don't worry about
Yeah.
it. um,
The great
but
point.
yeah,
Great point there.
if it is this unbiased thing, and we can actually use it for a really kind of more data driven um, conversation more than emotionally driven.
Hmm.
Um, I've certainly seen some conversations before where people get annoyed at others, or maybe they don't like having to maybe even delete a product line. It might have been a
Hmm.
product line that they spent years developing, and now you want them to kill it off. Like,
Yep.
if the data's there and you've got some kind of AI that is going, but look at the numbers, this makes sense.
Yep.
Um, I think maybe it'll start to bring people onto the same page.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. I think those are all super important points because that's how, as a business, you're going to be able to continue to challenge yourself to be better, right? Because if you could see the data and you could challenge yourself to, execute on the data, is how you're going to have a competitive advantage in this, fierce marketplace out there, right? Because all the companies are going to use it.
So, as much as there's exciting things, where are the challenges for this? Where do you see some of the challenges um, of what we're going into? Maybe it's not the challenge of integrating AI. I don't think we've really got um, anything to influence that. It's happening, whether we like it or not. So, what are the challenges that we're going to face when it comes to now having AI in our lives?
Yeah, I could have a few of those. Goes without saying are those type of customers that refuse to go on the cloud. They want to stay on premise. Um, when you do that, you kind of limit yourself, right? In terms of these different modeling programs out there. And there's some industries that have to stay on premise, right? But is that changing? Maybe, right? The defense industry, for example, a lot of their you know vendors are required to have databases that are secure, and some of those owners feel like those databases could be secure only if it's on premise, right? That opens you up to some security issues, right? And then also not taking full advantage of all the cloud AI functionality and software that's out there, right? I think that's a challenge. Adoption, I think, especially for some of those customers. um, and challenges, also will will those companies that have access to AI and have access to understanding what their numbers mean be able to use it for their benefit, right? I think right now a lot
Yeah,
of companies I see, they're just they're overloaded. They have, sometimes it's information paralysis. The more information you have, you just don't know what to do with it, right? I think that's a risk because if you have too much of that, you could go backwards. So it's having a good plan. I think we talked about this during our BI conversation. I think it was 2-3 episodes back. Talk about BI, where if you have too much of this data that's constantly thrown at you every single day, all these different dashboards, all this different information, right? How do you digest it? How do you take time to actually start to solve problems? Or do those problems just continue to get worse because you're not able to solve them on time? Does it create anxiety in your head that, hey, this is a ton of work I have ahead of me? Am I going to be able to do it? Right? Do I have
mm,
the skills necessary? Do my employees have the skills necessary to complete this? Right?
hmm,
I think that's an interesting point there where that has to be managed correctly.
mm,
Expectations have to be managed correctly. So um, I think that's what comes to mind immediately is there some of the challenges of implementing AI is, can those customers, especially that are on the on premise and stuff, can they adapt to this and get more to the cloud? And so you have machine learning and all these different tools available to you. And
mm.
then, with all this information that's available to you, is that going to cause you to slow down? Or, will that enable you to get better?
Yeah, I think also there's the skills gap now. Um, there was probably similar conversations 40 years ago when Excel came around, that
Mhm.
people were like, "That's it, accountants are done for." Anyone that's in finance, yeah, you're out of a job. You need to like find a new job now because Excel's around. It didn't happen though, did it?
Did not happen.
um, but the skills changed.
Hmm.
Now you had to get good at Excel,
Yeah.
um, to stay relevant or stay current or whatever, however you want to describe it. I think this is the new skills gap.
Yeah.
Um, I imagine that this will need to be on CVs. Like anyone can use, for example, ChatGPT. If we're talking
Yeah.
about natural language processing,
Hmm.
for these kind of tools, like anyone can use it, but it's how do you actually get out what you want from using that particular piece of AI, and knowing the right ways to talk to it. Um, like I'm talking like it's sentient or something, but you know the right queries to get what you want out of it, because a little bit like doing SQL queries, there's a cost, there's a database cost, there's a transaction happening, um, and if we're now going to be charged by tokens of pinging an AI server, like we need to get good at giving instructions, optimizing instructions, and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Like no one really knows. I certainly don't. I've just been playing with it and giving it everything and trying out all kind of weird and wonderful things. But we need to get kind of used to using AI as an extension of what we're already doing. We need to see it as a tool, and we now
Yep.
need to teach that as a tool, much like we
Hmm.
did with Excel.
Yeah.
You look at
Yeah.
CVs these days where people say proficient in Excel. That gets you nothing. That doesn't get you anything now. Like it's been out for 40 odd years. Like
Yeah.
it's a given that you should be able to use Microsoft Outlook and
Right.
Excel, and you should be able to
Right.
do a simple PowerPoint if you want to work in the world of business. Or
Hmm.
uh, you you shouldn't be putting that on your CV anymore. It's
Yeah.
like you might as well just put I can tie my own shoelaces. Like well done.
Yeah.
So can everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if that's the
Sure.
only thing that you've got to fill your CV with, well, says more about you than it does about your CV. Um,
Yeah.
but this is the thing. This is a new thing, and I imagine that we're going to soon see this as one as a skills gap, and two a big area that we now need to um, invest in training, in upskilling employees. People need to be. I am proficient at using this AI, or I'm proficient
Hmm.
in using this particular um, tool or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. I think um, a point on the other side of that is, will companies be open to expose this AI to give trade secrets or give secrets about their margins, or what kind of information is going to be available, right? To the different departments, essentially,
Mm.
to perform their jobs better. I think that's also some consideration, because AI could be so open ended, right? You have all this data, but that data may be going into the wrong hands, might
Yep.
not be ideal, right?
No,
Um,
and I guess this comes down to like data, the ethics around using this kind of stuff. Before we start chucking it our entire life story, um, we need to be careful about how we manage that from a data privacy and ethics point of view, and how much trust we're giving to certain platforms and kind of those things. And really, I mean, it depends where we go with this, but you could say giving it even the wrong data, you could start to introduce biases
yeah,
into the very thing that you think is unbiased, and you won't even
and
know it.
could that be premeditated to put that into the system?
Mm.
You know, right? Um,
Yep.
then I could see that causing some alerts and bells ringing if someone's doing something so outside the process. It creates a big deviation, right? I think there's still a process flow that needs to be mapped out for that. But awesome point there. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. we're all being pulled into the unknown with
Yeah,
this.
yeah, for sure. What does that lane look like, right? What lane should you be in when you talk about AI, right?
Mm.
Depending, you have an owner, you have a sales clerk, you have the purchasing agent, you have the material planner, you have the shipping agent. What is that, you know, exact type of data? What exact type of interaction with AI will those specific departments have? I think ultimately is
Yeah,
going to be the question.
I think there's going to be some semblance of jobs just being killed off by
Hmm.
this eventually.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I think there's going to be a lot of changes to current roles. They're not going to be the same.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of this, like, and even new roles. Maybe like we have data engineers and stuff. Like maybe there's some
Hmm.
kind of data ethics
Right.
director or whatever, that we
Yeah.
haven't necessarily needed before. So it's going to
Right.
be, I think there's going to be some jobs that are going to be killed off. There's going to be some jobs that are going to completely change how they look like. And there's going to be introduction of new jobs around these kind of things where there's gaps at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think it's all going to be ways to service customers faster, to get data faster, right, and execute on that data faster.
Yep. I only see it as a positive. I think overall it's definitely a positive, but we are stepping into the unknown. So uh,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a scary time, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think with enough flexibility um, and openness to this, uh, I can only really see it as um, certainly a huge leap forward in terms of the way that we operate.
I agree. I mean, there's a lot of ERP systems right now that are making a lot of noises right now in this whole, AI space. A few things I've been talking about through our podcast, one is Microsoft Dynamics, Business Central. Essentially,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about their Copilot program that they have out there, Copilot technology. And one thing that I saw about that is, if you're an e-commerce customer that's implemented Dynamics Business Central with Shopify using their native internet connector, well, you could now, I don't think it's real available for general release yet, but at least during beta, the system will look at the way you've defined the item on the item card, put together all that data, and you could say, yeah, this is a new item. Put together a headline text for me and put together a text description for me. It'll write up all that. They used to take hours and hours and hours from marketing professionals, right, in the company. They could tweak it a little bit if they want. They could have different ways they want that message to appear, like exciting, or they want that message to be more luxurious. They want the message to be more contemporary, right? Things like that. The AI will revise the text to meet that standard, and then with one click of the button, when it looks ready, they push it, and that text and the headline appears right under that item, right there in Shopify. You're not
That's
writing
awesome.
anything. I mean, that's huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's basically taking the existing data there, leveraging it to make someone's job so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Could that be a position that gets taken away? Yet to be determined. But it just makes that position easier. So maybe what they do is could concentrate more on pricing, making sure the
Mm-hmm.
price is correct, right? Making sure they're reaching the right customers at the end of the day instead of worrying about a mundane task such as maybe just writing a product description, right? Because then you could kind of analyze, yeah, is this description getting hits? If not, let's change it real quick, right? Let's add some more
Mm-hmm.
keywords in here. Let's do this and that and the other. Let's update it, right? It's not having to have
Mm-hmm.
to go through this long drawn out process to put in text description. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one. Um, and Microsoft has a few other applications of AI through the product is forecasting. Being able to look at your historical inventory usages for sales, for consumption, and things like that, and get better forecasting out of it. Predictive cash flow analysis is a good one.
Yeah.
Predicting late payments, um,
Mm-hmm.
um, and Acumatica also has some AI, ML, AL, AI languages and models coming out here soon. I've heard so
Okay.
excited to see what they're doing with the platform and product.
Yep.
So it's going to be adopted everywhere. Every department and a company that uses ERP systems is going to have ways to interact with AI. You know, exactly what is each department going to do? We don't know. We don't have a set of rules. We don't have a set of processes defined yet. But I think that's coming soon.
Yep. Yeah, and I think this is where jobs will change. I guess if I'm a marketing assistant, I'd be most scared. um, because that seems to be like AI seems to be really, really good at that.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd be scared of that, but you need to be flexible and try and incorporate it, I guess.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
accept that the mundane putting together the promotional flyer, like leave that to AI. And now what can you add to that? Use it as a tool. It shouldn't just be seen
Yeah.
as this scary thing that's
Exactly.
going to take your job away.
Exactly.
Um,
I did do a test in AI once. I put a bunch of different terms and ways I was like searching on some topics like accounts receivables, accounts payable, and stuff like that. Funny enough, it actually said the same thing in different ways. So if you think about it, let's say if you're a customer, you're a distributor, you sell the same product, right, as other distributors, and you use this to write your text, you may come up with the same text that another distributor is, but just maybe say it a little differently. So it's important to realize that, hey, you need to still make it your own, right?
yeah.
It's not going to make it unique for you yet. Could maybe down the road. But the last thing you want to do is get blacklisted by Google because all you guys are using the same description and no one's
Yeah.
selling any product down there.
This is the thing. Maybe we're going to have this AI versus AI, where one is an
Oh,
AI
yeah.
sniffing out other AI.
Oh, yeah.
I saw a story on the, online somewhere that was this guy was on a dating site chatting to someone, and he got a funny sniff from the replies he was getting. Confronted this person about it, and they were using ChatGPT. So, because they didn't have a lot of confidence issues or whatever it was, and
Uh-huh.
was saying, "Look, I'm using a dating site. The person has just sent me this. What should I send as a reply?" And he just kind of thought, "This looks a bit like ChatGPT's way of typing." Oh dear.
Something you can't, so it may get to a point you won't even be able to, unless you research in advance, somebody might be just reading a script, you know pure chat gtp script, you don't even
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
You got to be able to differentiate against that. But
yeah.
yeah, I think this is a really cool topic to me. It hits home on technology. We sell technology, we implement technology, we interact with it every single day. It's just going to get better. There's going to be some bad uses of it. There's going to be some really good uses of it. I think we're just scratching the surface.
Hmm. Yep. I'm going to include. I know we're rapidly running out of time, but I'm going to shout this one out because you mentioned it to me, and I haven't used it enough. But the Central AI website. Um, it seems to be done by a guy called Dimitri Katzen, and he's put together a website that allows you to ask questions about Business Central, as far as my understanding is.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's a very simple website where it's just a search box, and you
Yep.
use natural language to ask it basically anything that you want to do in Business Central. So um, that's really cool. I think that's a really good use of AI
I think
here.
so. I,
Um,
I think so.
I had a
I
look.
used
It's
it.
oh, have you?
Yeah, yeah. I put
I
in
haven't used
something
it
to
properly.
Yeah, I put in something about jobs. I'm like, jobs. Not a lot of people know jobs in Business Central. I'm like, let me just put jobs and revenue recognition. Bam! It came back with the right stuff, man. It came back with exactly how to process like WIP essentially. So that was really cool.
Nice. So I've had a look, and it actually lists out the pages, how many pages it uses from different sources. So basically, it's been fed just shy of 43,000 web pages
Wow.
across learn.microsoft.com, msdynamicsworld.com, microsoft.com. It's just you name it is here. Like learn.microsoft.com, 14,500 web pages.
Wow.
msdynamicsworld.com, which is huge. I've used it for finding the
Yep.
answer. That's got over 11,000 web pages that has been fed.
Wow. Wow.
So it's amazing. Imagine trying to search through your one very niche problem through some of that. I've had it
Yeah.
before when
Yeah.
you obviously you'd use Google and you'd find some random forum from like 2002 where this one person has had that issue. You're like, please, what did you see? What did you see?
Yeah. Yeah.
What did you see 21 years ago? What was the answer?
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, this is incredible. It's like here it all is, and
Yeah.
it's just got now 43, almost 43,000 data sources.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's why it's so powerful. That's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can access it through natural language. It's not like
Yeah.
you've got to
That
think
is
about the
cool.
keywords, like
Hmm.
you do with, I almost said like you used to have to do with Google.
Yeah.
Like it's a
I
Google
know.
start. Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, you have to put things in quotation marks to find the
Yeah.
exact and things like that. Like you
Exactly.
don't need to do that now.
You
That's
don't
really
need to
cool.
do
So,
that. Yeah.
Dimitri
And you find.
Katzen, if you ever listen to this, props to you to putting
Yeah.
that together.
Good
Well
job.
done.
Good job. That's a very nice tool.
Yeah,
I do have a joke before we sign off, if that's all right, Peter.
go on.
Are you ready? Are you ready for my stand-up comedy here?
If you tell me you're the guy that was using ChatGPT on a dating website, then we need to speak about
We'll have to take this off camera. Um,
that.
okay, here's a funny joke. Right, I hear they've made a new artificially intelligent Oreo. What do you
Okay.
think they called it? What do you think they're calling it?
I don't know. What are they calling it?
It's one smart cookie.
Oh,
The
don't give up
crowd
your
is
day
going
job.
wild. The crowd's
Yeah.
going wild.
Oh dear.
Oh man, this has been fun, Peter. This has been
It
awesome.
has. Yep.
We're just starting to get into this. We're going to talk more and more about it, but I really enjoyed this episode.
Yep, it's really good. I'm excited to see what happens. It's going at a crazy pace, so let's try and keep above it.
Yep,
And when we get some new things, I'm sure it's going to give us lots of content to talk about.
absolutely.